everyone! Today we are making a half circle skirt with 4 panels. This is a step-by-step video tutorial, and in this video I'll be walking you through the steps of taking your body measurements, drafting the skirt pattern, and sewing the skirt together. The half circle skirt that we're making in this video is made up of 4 panels and thus has 4 seams. The left side seam, the right side seam, the center front seam, and the center back seam. It has a close-fitted waistband and a skirt body that flares away from the hips and the knees. You can make this in any length that you desire. You can make it a mini, midi, maxi, knee length. We'll be going through all of that in this video. So you might have already noticed I'm placing a lot of emphasis on the 4 panels because this is different from a regular circle skirt, which is made up of one whole half circle cut in one single piece and then joined together along one seam to make the skirt body. And at this point you might also be asking yourself, so why do I want to make a half circle skirt with 4 panels when I can make it with one whole half semicircle? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are actually a number of benefits to having a half circle skirt in this design. Number 1, design possibilities. If you like colors and prints, then you can actually have more room to play around with different looks with just one single half circle skirt pattern. You can cut out each panel using a fabric of a different color to make a color block skirt, and you can even use a striped or plaid print fabric to make a chevron design on the center front and center back seam of the skirt. And number 2, functionality. If you love pockets, then it's so much easier for you to add your own inseam pockets into the skirt and even patch pockets by just aligning them next to the side seams. And before we head into the tutorial, I just want to make a quick introduction. My name is Gwen and this is my sewing/DIY channel, and sometimes I make sewing projects and sometimes I have in-depth tutorials like this one. A lot of my projects are geared towards vintage inspired style, and so if this sounds like something you think you're going to be interested in, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my videos. And now we're going to start making our half circle skirt with 4 panels. We're going to start by taking measurements of our body. We'll need the measurements of our waist circumference and determine the length of our skirt. So every body is a little different, but for me, my natural waistline sits a little above my belly button. If you think you're not quite sure where your natural waistline is, then take a narrow ribbon or a narrow elastic and tie it around your waist and see where it sits most comfortably. Then take a measuring tape, wrap it around your waist where the ribbon sits, and that's your natural waistline. If you're using elastic, don't tie it too tightly around your waist because then you might end up with a smaller waist circumference than you should. And at this stage, you should already have an idea of how long you want your skirt to be. The skirt that I'm making in this video is a knee grazing length from my height and it's about 25 inches long. To measure your skirt length, place the measuring tape perpendicular to your waistline. Standing in front of a full-length mirror or getting a friend to help definitely makes this easier. Or if you have a skirt in a length that you already love, then you can simply measure the length of that skirt. And now we're going to do some math. We are going to find R. R is the value of your waist plus ease plus 8 times of seam allowance divided by pi. And pi is 3.142. We need this R value to draw an arc that's going to help us to draw the skirt pattern. This skirt is meant to be a close-fitted skirt, so I would recommend an ease of about 1 to 2 centimeters. I'm adding 1 centimeter as ease for my skirt. I usually like my pants and my skirts pretty close-fitted, and 1 centimeter works fine for me, but if you feel like you're not sure, if you really want just 1 centimeter worth of ease, then try measuring your waistline again while you're sitting down, because in that position our waist expands a little bit more, and see if you're comfortable with that 1 centimeter. But I definitely do not recommend going more than 2 centimeters because with that then it's no longer a close-fitted skirt. So now you have the value of your waist, you have decided on your ease, and we're just going to use a standard seam allowance of 5/8 inch, which is about 1.5 centimeters, and we're going to use the formula to calculate R. Now, a note on units before we do the calculation. You need to make sure that all your numbers are in the same unit. So if you're using inches, then use 5/8 inch for seam allowance. If you're using centimeters like I am, then use 1.5 centimeters. I'm sorry that I'm kind of mixing the units as I talk about it because I'm a metric system person, but because I sew, then I also use inches, if that makes sense. So using the formula, the value of my R is 24.5. Now that we have the value of R, we're going to start drafting our skirt pattern. Start by drawing a square right on the edge of the paper. The length of each side of the square is the value of R that you got from your calculation earlier. Next, split the square in half by drawing a diagonal line from one corner to another. Next, using a straight ruler or a measuring tape and starting from the bottom right corner of the square, measure the distance of R and trace along until you get a little arc and get a little shape that looks like a pizza pie. This little arc actually represents the waistline of your skirt pattern. Next, using a measuring tape and starting from the arc, aka your waistline, measure the distance of your desired skirt length and trace along until you get the hemline of your skirt. Draw your side seam of your skirt pattern by extending the diagonal line to the hemline. It's really important to pause at this point and check your work. Make sure that the distance between the waistline and the hemline are the same all around. If at some point you realize that you're running out of space for drafting your skirt pattern, just stick another piece of paper down to what you already have to make more room. So we already included the seam allowances for the left side, the right side, the center front and the center back seams in our calculation, so that's already included in what we've drafted. And the last thing we need to do now is to add the seam allowance for the waistline and the hem allowance for the hemline. I'm using a standard seam allowance of 5/8 of an inch for the waistline and I'm adding 2 inches for hem allowance. Last but not least, we are going to draft the waistband for the skirt. Basically, the pattern for the waistband is a rectangle. The breadth of the rectangle is the width of the final band that you want, multiplied by 2, and with seam allowances added. The length of the rectangle is the measurement of your waist plus ease plus an inch for underlap and with seam allowances added. But because I don't like to cut a super long rectangle, I prefer to divide this length by 2 and have the pattern cut on the fold instead. So the waistband that I'm making for this skirt is 1 inch wide, and that's pretty standard. If you want something more dramatic, you can go up to 2 inches, but anything more than that is not recommended because that affects the fit and you actually have to do some kind of other modifications to the waistband for it to fit your body. And the 1 inch underlap is just an arbitrary number and also like a pretty standard allowance that I give for the underlap. Next, mark the zipper placement on your skirt pattern. The bottom of the zipper should be placed at least 8 1/4 inches from the waistline. But because I only have this 9-inch metal zipper that could go with the fabric that I'm choosing for my skirt, I'm marking the bottom of my zipper 9 inches from the waistline. The next thing that we need to mark on our skirt pattern is the grain line. To do that, cut the skirt pattern out and fold it in half lengthwise. The crease that you get from folding the skirt pattern in half is your grain line. And this is our half circle skirt pattern. Don't forget to write down your seam allowances and the measurements that you've used to draft this pattern for easy reference in the future. Are you ready? Is this the part that we've all been waiting for or what? We are about to start cutting and sewing the skirt together. The fabric that I'm using for this project is this dark green bed sheet that I got from the thrift store. I'm also using this vintage metal zipper that I've had in my stash for a while and a couple of hook and eye closures. Here is the suggested cutting layout for the skirt pattern. And if you're thinking about creating the chevron design like I mentioned at the start of this video, then this is what your stripe placement should look like. We also need to cut a piece of interfacing for the waistband to give it structure. Instead of drafting a new pattern, you can actually just use the same waistband pattern that you've used for the fabric. Just fold the seam allowance down and use the smaller rectangle to cut the interfacing on the fold. You should have 4 pieces of the skirt panel, 1 piece of the waistband, and 1 piece of the interfacing for the waistband. With all the pieces cut, we're ready to start sewing. First, baste the curved waistline of the skirt panels. Next, pin 2 skirt panel pieces right sides together and sew along one of the 2 long seams. Repeat this for another 2 skirt panels and you'll end up with 2 halves of a skirt with each half looking like this. Now we're going to pin the 2 halves of the skirt right sides together and sew them along the long seams again. And I hope you've marked out the zipper placement like I mentioned, because we'll be leaving an opening for inserting the zipper. And over here you'll see me just doing a back stitch where the bottom of the zipper is meant to go. Next, press the seams of the skirt body open with an iron. And this is also usually the stage where I finish the seams with a regular zigzag stitch on my machine, because I'm pretty basic and I don't have a serger. Next, sew your zipper to the skirt body. For my skirt, I'm doing a side-left zipper placement with my regular zipper. I like doing a side-left zipper because it gives more of a retro feel to my sewing projects. And if you like vintage style, maybe that's something you can consider. Otherwise, you can definitely just use a regular invisible zipper or just do center placement with a regular zipper as well. The world is your oyster. And now we're going to start working on the waistband. First, apply the interfacing to the waistband, and you have to make sure that you're applying the interfacing to the center of the waistband and that none of that interfacing is attached to the seam allowance. Next, press the seam allowance of one of the long edges of the waistband towards the wrong side. Then press the entire waistband in half lengthwise. We're basically marking the waistband by pressing it, and this is going to help us with our sewing later. Now unfold the waistband and fold it right sides together lengthwise and sew along the short edges of the waistband. Before turning the waistband right sides out, trim the seam allowance to remove some bulk, and feel free to use the end of the scissors or even the pencil to make sure that the corners of your waistband turns out nice and sharp. Okay, so now remember how we pressed the seam allowance of one of the long edges of the waistband towards the wrong side? We're going to take the long edge of the waistband that we have not pressed and pin that to the waistline of the skirt body right sides together. You should start by lining one short edge of the waistband to the left side of the zipper, and all of that 1 inch underlap which we included in the draft earlier will be where the right side of the zipper is. Right here. Before sewing the waistband to the skirt, you should also clip the curved waistline so that you can align this curved line to the straight edge of the waistband better, and also you will end up, less likely to have kinks when sewing the waistband to the skirt. You can also consider using basting stitches first at this stage, then test the fit of the skirt first and see if you need to make any modifications before committing to really sewing the waistband to the skirt. And now fold the seam allowance of the waistline to the insides of the waistband. Pin the waistband in place, and now it's time to sew the waistband to the wrong side of the skirt body. So I just want to talk about the few different ways that you can actually finish this step of sewing the waistband to the skirt body. The first way, which is the most straightforward, is to do a top stitch where the stitches are on the waistband on the right and the wrong sides of the waistband. The second one is a little bit trickier and it's called stitch in the ditch. So with this method, the stitches on the right side of the skirt are kind of snug between the waistband and the skirt body, so you don't really see it on the right side because it's just hidden in between, and the stitches are actually placed on the waistband on the wrong side of the skirt. The third method, which is the method that I'm choosing to use for my skirt in this video, is probably the most tedious, but it gives you the most control, and it also gives the best finish, in my opinion. Do you know what it is?
Wanna make a guess?
Yes, we're hand sewing the waistband to the skirt.
So of course you don't have to do hand sewing if you don't want to, but if you do feel like you want to, here is how I did it. I started by drawing my needle and thread through the folded edge of the waistband first. Then I inserted my needle right above the stitch line on the skirt. This is the stitch line that is holding the waistband and the skirt together. Your needle should only go through one layer of fabric and the stitch should not be seen on the right side of the skirt. I continued the same pattern of inserting the needle through the folded edge of the waistband, right here, and then right above the stitch line on the skirt body until the whole waistband was done. Next, stitch your hook and eye closure onto the waistband.
Okay, so I just want to take a minute to talk about something that happened to my waistband here. So I originally intended for my waistband to be in line with the left side of the zipper opening, like this highlighted part here. But something happened. Either I didn't draft it right when I was drawing the rectangle, or it shifted while I was sewing. Regardless of what happened, what I ended up with is a 1/4 inch of overlap on the left side of the zipper opening, and I ended up sewing an extra snap button just so that the overlap bit won't be like flapping around, because I don't like the look of that. I guess the message that I'm trying to bring across is that there's no right or wrong way to sewing this waistband, and if something didn't go according to plan, don't panic. As long as the skirt fits, it fits. That's all we need. There's no right or wrong way of doing something. The right way is just a way that works for you.
So now that the waistband is done, we are really close to finishing the skirt. The last thing that we need to do is to hem the skirt. Because this is a half circle skirt, hemming the skirt will require a little bit more time and patience. First, lay the skirt over an ironing board with pins and an iron ready. Using a measuring tape and starting from the bottom of the waistband, measure out the skirt length that you want and mark out the hemline on the skirt using pins. With the pins as a guide, fold the hem allowance towards the wrong side of the skirt. Press the hem in place. And because this is a circular hem, there will be bits of the hem where the fabric seems to pop up and not lay flat. Make tiny pleats all along the hem to ease the fullness of the circular hem. Then fold and press the raw edge of the hem towards the wrong side of the hem allowance. Make sure you don't unfold your pleats by accident. And finally, hand sew the hem in place. This is a method that's similar to the one that I've used for sewing the waistband to the skirt. The most important thing to note about hemming this skirt is that when you are pushing the needle through the fabric of the skirt, make sure you're only picking up about 2 to 3 threads. Yes, threads. 2 to 3 threads of the fabric. This is so that the stitches are so small and tiny that you almost can't see them on the right side, and they appear to be invisible.
Congratulations, you just made a half circle skirt! this is the end of our half circle skirt tutorial. If you have thoroughly enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up so I know I am doing a good job. I've taken a lot of time and effort into making sure that this tutorial is fun and easy to understand and full of good information. So if there's something that you like, please let me know so I'll do more of those, or if there's something that I didn't quite explain clearly, let me know as well so I can improve and make my step-by-step tutorials better in the future. If you have a specific request you want me to make the chevron design like I mentioned in this tutorial, let me know as well and I'll kind of like slot that in my plans. So this skirt that I made in this video is actually part of my autumn-winter capsule wardrobe. Come back next week for more autumn-winter making shenanigans type of stuff, I guess. I guess that's it. I gotta finish wrapping it up so I can finish and eat and drink tea or something. I will see you next week. Bye!